It was one of the greatest battles of World War II, and the largest since the D-Day invasion.
No one on the Allied side thought that Hitler could mount a counteroffensive the way he did.
German!
It was a battle in which the American army suffered over 80,000 casualties.
Where's the commanding officer?
He's dead!
And nearly lost the entire war.
Hitler had a reputation for coming up with these bold initiatives and would just stun people.
Fire!
250,000 German soldiers.
Hands up! Someone!
1,000 German tanks. And a surprise attack that proved Germany had not been defeated.
They had high morale, they had confidence in the plan, they were ready to go.
Hitler gave it the code name Watch on the Rhine. The German army called it the Ardennes Offensive. But to history, it will always be known as the Battle of the Bulge. Christmas Day, 1944. 9 days into Hitler's surprise offensive in the harsh terrain of Belgium's Ardennes forest. The overwhelmed Americans are clinging to their last stronghold, Bastogne.
It became an Allied pocket of resistance.
Fire!
It was crucial to the German effort that they destroy that resistance.
General Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, has ordered General George Patton to race to Bastogne before it's overwhelmed by the Nazis. But time is running out. If the Germans overrun Bastogne, it could change the outcome of the war.
Fire!
How will the outnumbered Americans keep the swarming enemy at bay? The fate of Europe now rests in the hands of a few brave men. But in December 1944, no one knows this bloodbath is waiting on the horizon. At checkpoints all along the Allied front lines, there is a welcome lull in the war. In the 6 months since the Normandy invasion, the Allies have made dramatic advances across Europe, reaching the Siegfried Line, where Hitler has fortified the very borders to Germany. D-Day was the most successful invasion in the history of warfare. And now the Allied army takes a moment to rest and catch its breath in the final drive toward Berlin.
U-28 ID?
That's right. Bloody buckets, huh? Heard you guys seen some real action.
The Allies in December of 1944 were exhausted. Time was required to get supplies back up to the front to renew the offensive in the spring.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So you men are spread pretty thin here, aren't you? Yeah, but it's been slow here. Lots of the boys got passes.
Yeah, sure wouldn't mind getting out of here for the holidays.
Not me. I didn't come here just to freeze at some roadblock. I came here to see some action. Where are you from, kid? Muncie, sir. Muncie, Indiana. I've been here about a week. Well, don't be too anxious. When you shoot at someone here, they shoot back. A lot.
Hey, we should get going to Clare Valley, Lieutenant.
All right. Stay sharp. See anything you called in. All right.
Thank you, sir.
A lot of new replacements were being sent to the Ardennes. They're just out of camp. Here's where soldiers are resting and refitting, training new troops.
But the winter vacation from war would prove to be an illusion. While the Allied forces rested and regrouped, the German High Command was not sitting idle. 3 months earlier, at Adolf Hitler's retreat, Wolf's Lair, Nazi generals, led by Hasso von Manteuffel, map out plans for a vigorous defense of the fatherland.
Manteuffel was very popular with Hitler, who had in fact promoted him to command of an army. He was a good, solid, veteran, experienced soldier.
Von Manteuffel knew they could easily hold off the Allies if they dug in.
Wir müssen unsere Landesgrenze hier verteidigen, an der Siegfriedlinie. Hier, hier und hier. Das ist unsere einzige Lösung, meine Herren. Na dann.
But Adolf Hitler was interested in more than defensive strategy. He still held out hope for an Axis victory.
Eine ausgezeichnete Strategie für eine Defensive. Aber wenn wir siegen wollen, dann dürfen wir nicht verteidigen, dann müssen wir angreifen.
Hitler believed the Allies were exhausted and that their long supply lines were stretched to the breaking point. Now was the time to hit them hard before they could regroup, while they were still weak from their last offensive push.
Hitler had a reputation for coming up with these bold initiatives that all of a sudden would just stun people. Even some of his senior generals, when they first heard the plan, they were just stunned by the audacity of it.
Aber mein Führer, auch wir sind geschwächt. Wären wir stärker, hätten wir sie schon in Normandie aufgehalten.
Normandie sind das Fehler unterlaufen! Das findet kein zweites Mal statt. Wir müssen einen Keil hineintreiben zwischen den Amerikanern und den Engländern.
That alliance wasn't shaky, but Hitler, in his megalomania, was convinced that it was.
Hitler's strategy was to recreate the successful blitzkrieg attacks of the first years of the war. He proposed a surprise lightning strike attack that would capture the port of Antwerp and stop the Allied supplies. The key to the Führer's plan was to attack where it was least expected.
Wir werden hier angreifen, in den Ardennen.
Mein Führer, das ist unmöglich.
Richtig. Und genau deshalb werden wir den Überraschungsmoment auf unserer Seite haben.
The Ardennes region is 88 miles of pine tree forest, stretching from Luxembourg north through Belgium. The only troops in the Ardennes were thinly spread American units. Commanders believed the location offered safety from attack.
The terrain did not favor an attacker. It was heavily wooded. The roads were limited. The ability to support lines of communication was extremely limited in the Ardennes area. They figured that if it's difficult for us to attack through, surely the Germans will recognize that it's difficult for them to attack through.
Despite the urging of his top commanders to reconsider, Hitler remained resolute. In December of 1944, the German war machine shifted into high gear, making preparations for an all-out surprise offensive that would gamble everything on a corner of the Ardennes forest. With little more than light winter clothes, the American troops were hardly prepared for the brutal temperatures of an Ardennes winter. But what they lacked in attire, they made up for in superior weaponry, such as the BAR, the Browning automatic rifle. Retired U.S. Marine Corps Captain Dale Dye is a weapons expert and military advisor on numerous feature films.
When America entered World War II, there was a perceived need for heavy fire support. The Browning automatic rifle, model M1918A2, essentially a light machine gun providing fire support in the squad. It fired from a 20-round box magazine. What's interesting is that the weapon does what typically all automatic weapons will do, and that's because of the reciprocation of the bolt and the recoil. They'll start in the center and then climb high left. This is the surprising thing. Look at this headshot. Absolutely all rounds in that small an area. Now that is holding and squeezing. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
While the Americans may have felt comforted by their powerful weapons, they never expected to use them in the assumed security of the Ardennes. This made it the perfect location for Hitler's army to quietly prepare for the surprise attack.
The Germans had radio silence. They're being very quiet, and they had made everybody swear to secrecy. Cloud covering meant that aerial reconnaissance was useless. No one realized the amount of troops that were massing in the area.
Hey, you see that?
See what?
I'm gonna go check it out.
Knock yourself out.
German secrecy about the upcoming attack was so successful that Allied command had no idea that one of the largest German offensives of the entire war was about to take place.
Take a look at this. Came in earlier from Losheim.
General Dwight D. Eisenhower was Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in Europe. General Omar Bradley was commander of the 12th Army. They meet to discuss reports of unusual activity in the Ardennes region and to celebrate that Eisenhower has just been promoted to 5-star general.
Dwight David Eisenhower was probably the right man in the right place at the right time. Probably no other soldier alive at that time could have done what he did in terms of managing a huge, broad-ranging command. He was a supreme military diplomat.
Bradley was a West Point graduate who had worked his way up through the ranks to become a top commander. He and Eisenhower, or Ike, are skeptical of reports of enemy movement in the Ardennes.
Battalion of Panzers? What are they talking about?
Reports of tanks from a couple of our forward posts. Isn't that area heavily wooded?
Losheim, it's nothing but trees, lots and lots of trees. I tell them they have nothing to worry about. They're not in tank country.
For unsuspecting troops along the front lines, small skirmishes gave no inkling of the magnitude of the attack to come. It is December 15th, 1944, and the Ardennes offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, is about to get underway. Dawn, December 16th, 1944. American troops wait for supplies all along the quiet 88-mile front of the Ardennes forest before attempting a final push into Germany. They believe the Third Reich's army is beaten and expect the war to be over soon. Little do they know that Hitler has pulled together a massive force poised to launch a sneak attack. A last-chance offensive that could turn the tide of the war.
The Allies had 80,000 troops in the area, 400 tanks and 400 guns. Now, these troops were either battle-weary and tired or fresh off the boat. Germany had about 250,000 soldiers. They had high morale, they had confidence in the plan, there were nearly 1,000 tanks, they were ready to go.
The German army's goal was to take the port of Antwerp and cut off Allied supply lines. In manpower alone, the Germans held a 3-to-1 advantage. Commanding the German army at the center of the offensive is General von Manteuffel.
Manteuffel was a very experienced armor commander. He'd fought in the West and in the East. Very talented, very well thought of, general staff trained, and a long-serving officer.
The German army had been devastated over the course of the war. Ordinary citizens from 16 to 60 years old were pressed into service with little or no training to build the massive force Hitler needed for the offensive.
Jawohl, Herr Oberstleutnant.
Sind denn Ihre Männer überhaupt etwas wert?
Die Männer sind bereit, für den Führer zu sterben.
Danach habe ich nicht gefragt.
Naja. Nein, Herr Oberstleutnant. Die Männer sind nicht gut ausgebildet. Die meisten halten das erste Mal eine Waffe in der Hand.
5th and 6th Panzer Armies are both led by experienced armored officers. They know that this is probably the last shot that they have to alter the course of the war. So they pass that knowledge down to their subordinate commanders. They issue orders that this is it, boys. We have got to win here.
Ihr Ziel ist klar. Machen Sie den Weg für die Panzer frei. In 4 Tagen müssen wir an der Mars sein.
Machen Sie mal den Weg da frei.
Machen Sie mal die Straße frei, Mensch. Ein bisschen schnell. Danny!
Auf geht's, macht die Straße frei! Schneller, bewegt euch!
German High Command was under intense pressure to push forward. Though many of their troops were untrained, the Germans held a definite advantage in manpower. But their main disadvantage was their primary field rifle, the 98K, which fell short when compared to the American M1 Garand.
This is the United States Rifle Caliber 30 M1, commonly known as the Garand. It loaded through an 8-round en-bloc clip and could fire 8 rounds. This is the German Mauser 98K. It was the German Army's equivalent of the M1 Garand that held only 5 rounds. Now remember, that's 5 rounds as opposed to the M1 rifle's 8 rounds.
Schnell machen! Wir müssen alle zusammenarbeiten!
On the morning of the 16th, the Germans launched a surprise attack on American positions.
Los! Los! Coming in everywhere.
All the GIs could do was dig in and fight for their lives while trying to slow the German advance.
The story of the Bulge in those first couple of days is the Americans sacrificing men for time. You're buying time to get reinforcements to the threatened area.
Thank God you're here! Where's the commanding officer? He's dead! Where's the rest of your unit? They're all dead! How much ammo do you have left? Not enough!
And commanders were gone when people lost their units and didn't know where they were. The ability to understand the mission, take initiative, and move forward in the lack of any other direction. That is a strength that America brought to World War II.
As supplies hit critical lows and troop numbers dwindled, American GIs maneuvered through the Ardennes to find and fight alongside other units. The American Sherman tank was considered an excellent medium tank when introduced in 1942. It was armed with 3 machine guns and a 75mm cannon. It was protected by 2.8 inches of armor thickness. By 1944, the Sherman was outclassed by newer German tanks like the Tiger. The German Army had just introduced the Mark VI, or Tiger tank. It carried an 88mm gun that fired a 22-pound shell that could destroy a Sherman from a half-mile away. Weighing 63 tons, its armor was thick enough to make it virtually invulnerable to the Sherman. By the end of the day, von Manteuffel's army had made significant gains, creating a bulge in the Allied lines. day 3 of Hitler's Ardennes offensive. The German war machine surges west toward the town of Clairvaux. If Clairvaux falls, the Germans will be in position to drive straight through to their main objective, Antwerp.
What the hell is happening? Sir, German artillery's broken through the front lines. It's chaos. I can't reach divisional headquarters.
Keep trying.
Sir, we have Tigers and artillery coming up the main road.
Lieutenant, get every gun we've got and get to that tree line right now.
Yes, sir.
Move it.
Give me the phone.
Sir. General, sir. Yes, sir, we're under attack. We need a 2nd Battalion up here right now.
What do you mean the situation hasn't developed enough? We're getting pounded here.
Despite stiff resistance, thousands of U.S. troops were killed or captured as Allied defensive positions crumbled all along the 88-mile front. Hitler's army had dealt a destructive first blow. As American troops struggled to hold their positions throughout the Ardennes, the Germans advanced with devastating force.
No one on the Allied side thought that Hitler could mount a counteroffensive the way he did. Certainly not in the Ardennes sector, and certainly not with the force that he eventually mustered. They simply thought the Germans didn't have those resources to bring into the fight.
Ike, German units have taken Clairvaux and Wiltz and are advancing on Bastogne. Enemy surprise has been total.
Gentlemen, the present situation is to be regarded as one of opportunity, not disaster. There will be only cheerful faces at this conference table. Is that understood? George, what do you think?
Hell, I say let them try to go all the way to Paris. We can cut them off and really chew them up.
The higher Allied commanders saw the German counteroffensive as an opportunity. The bulge meant that there were hundreds of thousands of German troops that were outside Germany, away from their prepared defenses.
Between Eisenhower's decisiveness and Patton's boldness, there was an electrifying spirit that brought everyone's morale up, motivated everyone to make the decisions that were necessary to move the troops in a position to conquer the bulge.
How quickly can you organize an attack?
I can start a counterattack on the morning of December 21st with 3 divisions.
Need the initial blow to be a strong one. Settle for the 23rd.
Will do, Ike.
Despite the Germans' bold thrust into Allied territory, the top command saw a weakness in the attack plan. In thickly wooded terrain, a tank army must control the roads. And all roads in the Ardennes converged on one spot, Bastogne.
7 key roads go in and out of Bastogne. So Bastogne is the hub of a spoke wheel, and unless you take that town, you cannot move your army.
Eisenhower knows that holding Bastogne is the key to stopping the German offensive.
We need to send some divisions in that are tough.
Airborne's the toughest boys we've got.
Do it.
Command, this is Bradley. Go with the 101st. Be good in 24.
Good job.
December 19th. The paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division are sent in to secure Bastogne. They are one of the elite forces of the U.S. Army. Their orders are to hold the town at all costs. They know that if the Germans take Bastogne, the Reich will control movement through the Ardennes and possibly split the Allied army in two.
All right, troops, let's get yourselves squared away!
Acting commander of the 101st is a senior artillery officer, General Anthony McAuliffe.
Contact General Bradley. Let him know we're in place ready to handle whatever the Germans can dish out.
McAuliffe was a very decisive figure. He was acting on his own in the absence of his own division commander, and he did a superb job of getting the division to Bastogne and getting them set up in a defense.
327th tells me the last road out was just taken over by a panzer unit.
That's gonna be some Christmas, eh, Colonel?
Poor bastards, they've got us surrounded.
Where'd you find these boys?
Sir, we've had stragglers coming in from all over.
It was up to that backbone of 101st troops to gather up those stragglers as they came in and try and put them into some coherent kind of defense. So you had men from all different kinds of units who might not even be infantrymen. All of a sudden, tossed a rifle, told to man a foxhole, and wait for the Germans.
Lieutenant.
Sir.
Get a unit put together, report back to me at HQ. I'm putting you on perimeter patrol. Welcome to Bastogne.
Yes, sir. All right, gentlemen, let's get this done.
The new unit gave themselves a new name, Team Snafu. Snafu was a new Army slang word in 1944, standing for Situation Normal, all fouled up. On December 20th, the last units of the 101st Airborne arrive.
So now the Germans have to either take Bastogne quickly by committing a large number of troops to overwhelm the 101st, or they have to continue moving on. The Germans compromise. And they deploy about 30,000 troops, reinforced with the armored regiment, to try and take Bastogne.
Manteuffel said that if we do not capture Bastogne, they will become abscesses behind us. And that's where the battle became focused, around Bastogne.
The Germans attacked with superior numbers and firepower.
Incoming! Incoming!
As the German offensive pushes forward on all fronts, the American soldiers in Bastogne are now isolated. They are surrounded at the crossroads hub with orders to hold the town at all costs. December 20th, 1944. At crossroads across Belgium, American soldiers attempt to stem the tide of a surprise German attack.
Oh my God!
Just 4 days after the start of Hitler's stunning Ardennes offensive, German armored and infantry units have overrun American positions, creating a bulge in the lines that could spell Allied defeat in Europe. The key to maintaining forward movement for the German offensive is to control the roads, and the one place where all roads come together is a Belgian town called Bastogne. But every German assault on the crossroads town has been thwarted.
Fire!
Von Manteuffel knows what's at stake.
Schmitz. Jede Verzögerung bedeutet die Vernichtung der Offensive und der Armee. Der Führer hat befohlen, die Stadt zu erobern. Nehmen Sie die Stadt ein, und zwar sofort. Abfahrt.
Leading the defense of Bastogne is U.S. General Anthony McAuliffe.
Okay, what do you got? I'm hearing orders.
McAuliffe as an artillery commander is so important to have in that position, even though for a good portion of the siege, the Americans are outgunned and they don't have artillery. McAuliffe knows where to use what he has when it's most important, and the Germans frequently talk about the devastating American artillery barrages.
And playing directly into McAuliffe's hands were the ineffective German tactics.
There was no coordinated attack. What we had was a lot of German probing here and there, looking for the easy answer on how to race into Bastogne quickly.
The outnumbered U.S. forces devised the perfect strategy to thwart the piecemeal German attacks. American troops and artillery were moved from location to counter each German probe.
It was a mobile defense. able to maneuver around to adjust to where Germans were approaching.
Delta Charlie, move those mortars. Block that road. Get down there. We've got to get some coverage. Roger.
Any troops in the open? Range 300 yards. Half load.
Half load.
Fire! 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 Fire!
Belastung! Deckung! Half load! Fire! Fire! Fire!
Rounds complete.
The mobile defense was made up of the 101st's artillery and fast-moving combat teams.
In many cases, those guys at company level, battalion level, had no communications with their higher headquarters whatsoever. So left to their own devices, more often than not, those soldiers tended to fight like banshees, and they caused a great amount of difficulty for the German units.
They took heavy casualties. It was a difficult job. But that shifting mobile defense allowed a relatively small number of troops to do a great job of defending the city.
Still unable to take over the encircled Bastogne, a frustrated von Manteuffel decided to try a different approach. On December 22, 1944, he ordered his officers to deliver a message to the besieged Allied commander.
Perhaps in a fit of pique, perhaps arrogance, they send a surrender demand, and the note is taken back to Anthony McAuliffe at his headquarters in Bastogne.
General?
What is it?
The Germans have made contact. They're demanding we surrender.
Oh, nuts!
Nuts? Nuts, was heißt das? Nuts? Heißt das Nein?
As soon as that response is given, McAuliffe and his staff print them up and they distribute it to the guys on the line, and they love it. It builds their confidence, and it becomes a great source of pride.
Von Manteuffel did not see the humor of McAuliffe's reply.
He was not only being denied, but he was being denied in a very rude American colloquial fashion.
Das wird Ihnen noch leid tun! Artillerie verdoppeln und kontaktieren Sie die Luftwaffe.
That night, for the first time since the offensive began, the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, took to the skies. December 22nd, 1944. The German Luftwaffe joins Hitler's Ardennes offensive, pounding the besieged city of Bastogne from the air.
Get up here!
Despite being surrounded, outnumbered, and desperately low on ammunition and supplies, the men of the 101st Airborne will not let Bastogne fall.
For the American Armed Forces in Europe, Bastogne very quickly became a symbol of here at least we're holding on. Here at least we are making a stand. Our troops aren't just retreating. Our troops aren't surrendering. Here they stand and fight.
One week after the Ardennes offensive began, Allied help is on the way. Eisenhower had ordered General George Patton to make a radical 90-degree turn to fight their way north through German-held territory. Their goal? To relieve the besieged U.S. troops in Bastogne. Patton's army was on the way, but it would be days before it could reach Bastogne. It seemed doubtful that the beleaguered soldiers could hold out that long.
Those guys were tired. In many cases, they were demoralized. They were running short on ammunition, and they were in a sea of snow.
Air support was grounded. The Ardennes winter had frozen Allied supply lines.
Because of the cloud cover, they couldn't get C-47s or gliders in. It was too dangerous to fly. They've got to sweat it out until the weather clears.
No one expected that you'd have to have a division and more of infantry troops in Bastogne. There weren't the resources to supply them.
They're running low on rifle ammunition. They're running very low on artillery. It's a major problem. They let McAuliffe know, hey, we've only got 200 rounds left for the entire battalion. McAuliffe says, well, you know what? Make every round count. Only fire if you see the whites of their eyes. It's a desperate, desperate time.
See what I can do.
I appreciate it. Can I reach out?
It's up. Hey!
The day that the weather cleared was a godsend for Bastogne.
They're gonna make it. They're gonna make it.
December 23rd, the weather finally breaks. Allied planes once again take to the air and begin to drop supplies. Christmas comes early to Bastogne. In just over 4 hours, 241 planes restocked the troops with food, medical supplies, and ammunition.
Come on, do the ass. We're out.
Go, come on. Hurry up. Go.
Even with the arrival of aerial resupply, the siege was still going on in full force. If anything, the Germans knew at that point, we've really got to get the job done. Time is running out.
The Germans planned to take Bastogne in a lightning strike attack, but this is not the Blitzkrieg Army of 1940.
The quality of German troops was nothing like it had been in the initial campaigns of the war. Most of the good junior leaders had died off. Most of the good NCOs had died off. Hitler was really scraping the bottom of the barrel to fill these infantry regiments.
In 1944, many of the soldiers were newly drafted, untrained citizens, some as young as 16.
Johann, Sie sind Neuendesigner, nicht wahr?
Jawohl, Herr Leutnant.
Warum haben Sie dem Führer nicht schon früher gedient?
Herr Kommandant, ich bin auf dem Hof meiner Eltern geblieben, als meine Brüder in die Armee gingen. Sie sind alle im Krieg umgekommen. Und dann wurde auch ich eingezogen.
Johann, der Führer braucht alle seine Kinder, um das Vaterland zu verteidigen.
Ja, Herr Kommandant, ich verstehe.
Now, restocked with ammunition, the Americans quickly go to work, raining artillery on the German troops surrounding the village.
Target 300 yards!
Danke für den Kaffee.
Bitte gerne, Herr Leutnant.
300 yards! Come out! Fire!
As the Americans pummel German positions, von Manteuffel learns of Patton's steady approach from the south. He knows if Patton's relief force reaches Bastogne, the city will be impossible to take. Manteuffel wants to turn his army to cut Patton off. He sends his request to the German High Command. But Hitler remains firm in his orders. Take Bastogne.
Der Führer hat abgelehnt. Konzentrieren Sie Ihre Truppen auf Basnacht. Wir müssen in Basnacht sein und wir müssen Basnacht einnehmen, bevor die Amerikaner dort sind. Los, auf geht's!
Jawohl, jawohl. Bastogne became an Allied pocket of resistance. It was crucial to the German effort to get through Bastogne. It was also very symbolic that they destroyed that Allied resistance, and that's what they set out to do.
Christmas Eve, 1944. The men who now call themselves the battered bastards of Bastogne prepare to endure another long, cold night. Outside the village, the German Fifth Army masses. Now trapped and facing a rear attack, Hitler's men know they have to take Bastogne or die. Where they had failed with strategy and firepower, they now plan to succeed with sheer numbers.
Fire! Fire!
For 4 days, the surrounded and outnumbered American troops at Bastogne have held the Germans at bay. They know that if Bastogne falls, it could change the outcome of the war.
They had heard that the 4th Armored Division was fighting its way up from the south. McAuliffe had been told that they were going to be there on Christmas.
Now realizing the threat of Patton's fast-approaching army, Hitler orders one more massive attack to take Bastogne. While the Americans struggled to hold Bastogne, Patton's relief army is still miles away. Progress is slow as they slug it out near the encircled town.
Drive! Drive!
Back in Bastogne, the German troops are unrelenting. But the Americans hold their ground. Newly restocked with ammunition, their guns devastate the approaching German tanks and troops.
Justin fire, come left, 2 degrees. Come left, 2 degrees. Right, 5 degrees. Drop 5 degrees. Ready? Fire!
The Germans were facing stiffer resistance than they expected. They now had a big problem.
Wo ist meine Unterstützung? Ich brauche mehr Panzer!
The Germans had committed a strategic blunder by not leaving behind enough men and tanks to capture Bastogne.
Meint Sie, es kommt keine Unterstützung?
With mounting losses, dwindling resources, and Patton's army fast approaching, Hitler's army had run out of time.
Männer! Angriff! Los!
Alert headquarters, they're retreating!
The Allies had secured Bastogne, but the war with Germany was far from over.
Good job, Max.
On December 28th, 3 days after the Battle of Bastogne ended, Patton arrived with his troops. The threat of his approaching army had forced the Germans' hand.
Morning, General. Morning, General. Mighty glad to see you. Looks like I've missed the party.
While the fight for Bastogne was over, Patton's army would now launch a counteroffensive, and the Battle of the Bulge would continue into January. But the Germans would soon face a bigger problem than the American army.
Literally and figuratively, the German offensive ran out of fuel.
The operation required that they refuel along the way and that they seize American fuel dumps to reach Antwerp. They weren't able to do that and couldn't go any further.
With no fuel to power their attack, the Germans were quickly pushed back to where they started, and the Allies could begin their final assault into Germany.
Mein Führer, die Offensive ist gescheitert.
The Battle of the Bulge was one of the costliest struggles in all of World War II. The German army had perhaps as many as 100,000 casualties, while the American army suffered over 80,000 killed or wounded. But the battle effectively ended the Third Reich's ability to defend the fatherland. By the end of the Battle of the Bulge, Nazi Germany was finished.
Soldiers have never fought better in a worse cause than the men who wore Hitler's field gray.
Ultimately, they sucked off troops that probably more effectively could have been employed in the final defense of the homeland.
For the Americans, the Ardennes offensive was vindication of their military strength.
Here they had taken the best the Germans could throw at them in the worst of weather conditions and fought obstinately and stubbornly.
The Ardennes offensive was commanded by generals in distant locations. But in truth, the Battle of the Bulge was fought and won by individual GIs. They were citizen soldiers, average men who overcame insurmountable odds to do their duty. These are the true heroes of the Battle of the Bulge.